And as some of you might have heard, digital seems to be the big thing in gaming now. We obviously have developers who are acting more like publishers. We have publishers who are acting more like service providers and actual vendors of product. And the big issue that we seem to be facing is that customers are getting this information in more places than ever. We have more levers, knobs, and dials that we can turn than ever as marketers. And of course, our marketing department has now grown from 5 to 10 to 20 people to suddenly we've got an audience of millions, each of whom can be marketing themselves. And at the same time, of course, everyone involved in the creation of a product is, in fact, a marketer. And I think that's probably a good place to start, would be to talk about when you are marketing online, how much of it begins as a genesis with the product itself, and at what point should marketing be embedded in the process, knowing that content updates, lifecycle management, all of this goes into your marketing mix now, because what we're really talking about, at least in my opinion, is relationship building and customer service and management. So, if you want to start it off, Jerome?
At Turbine, we do massively multiplayer games, persistent world. So the problematic of creation of content is absolutely key, because we enter a relationship with our customers, which is a long-lasting relationship. When you were talking about marriage earlier on, it definitely, and divorce, and mistresses, it's an episodic tenure that we have to deal with. So creating the right content to get started is important, but massive worlds are massive by definition, and therefore the amount of content that you have to create is huge, and the opportunity to do mistakes is also very important. So throughout the product development process, it's important to get the feedback from basically your main customers, the ones that are the fans, or who have declared an affinity to the IP that you are marketing or developing for. So embedding this in your development process is the first starting point, and then having that feedback, then one-to-one relationship throughout basically the life of a product is absolutely key, so that you can actually keep them playing, keep monetizing them, because you deliver the content that they expect. At the same time, you need to onboard new players. So it's a constant flux between, basically the development team, the marketing team, and the players, and that communication has to happen.
Right, but a lot of people speak about social media, Facebook, Twitter, right now, talking about putting together a strategy. What portion of your marketing mix should that be, and how much of it is actually driven by content value, the creation of coupons, discounts, new materials that you can spread out there, or is it enough simply to put out a message and expect the community to parrot it? What do you think, man?
I think Leo should talk about this. Because if we're going to phase it out, because I can talk about the long tail, but Leo's game's not out yet. Right. But he's already formed a dialogue with his consumers. I mean, there's a lot of brand marketers here, and ultimately, marketing is about relationships with your customer base, and that's largely about brand. And sometimes I don't have the benefit of growing a great brand, but you have a huge brand called Star Wars, and now you're creating a dialogue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we talk to our customer all the time. We have a long-term relationship. We launched a website, in October of 2008 to talk about Star Wars: The Old Republic. People were whispering about it ahead of time, and some of the things we talked about ahead of time is that one of the things I'm most proud of is that we've updated our website with new content every single Friday since then, and that's a huge achievement. And so it's all about content. It's about constant communication. It's about developing a relationship with your customer that is based off of quality and honesty and making promises. My favorite thing to do is to probably go back to what I call the marketing basics, which is, it's all about the blocking and the tackling. You don't have to come up with gimmicks. You don't have to come up with crazy stuff. You just have to be, really honest with your customer. You have to try and figure out what they want, what they need, what they're thinking about, and then you have to give it to them. So understand your customer, understand your product, and introduce them to each other.
Right, well, it's interesting, based on what you said. I mean, you've got the Star Wars brand, as Min pointed out. So if you don't have as well-known of a brand, how can you drive customer acquisition? What do you find to be the most effective methods across the board? Gentlemen?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about building brands. It's not that we're never going to have a brand. So when you look at Maple's story today in North America, it's been out probably here since remotely being operated since 2005, and now we've registered over 7 million people, and I think for those players now we very much have a brand. And it's really about how do we get them to activate new players, and that's really about driving new content into the game that they're excited about, and then how do you re-engage those players that we were saying before that we married and ended up divorcing us and going somewhere else, and those are really by creating those communication channels. And in the past, In the infancy of our US office, what we would do is we would buy media and say, hey, this update is coming out. You really want to come back for this update. But later what we realized is, wait, these are our customers. We have a direct relationship with them. Why are we paying media dollars to tell them to come back when we've already got direct communication channels? So what we started trying to do now is you can drop emails in their box, but a lot of them, again, like Dave mentioned, sign up with their junk email, so they'll never end up getting them. We think that the next stage is actually in marketing is to meet them where they are. Instead of telling them to come to you, is to create, for example, a Facebook page and give them direct feeds where they're existing every day. And so when you look at MapleStory now, I think we've, since our Facebook effort started in the spring, we've put about 180,000 Facebook likes or Facebook fans on MapleStory. So we're able to feed them content, and if they like it, they're going to disseminate that to their friends, and it's been extremely powerful for us.
But it's interesting because David touched on the concept of friction, which I think is fascinating, and especially when it comes to marketing, because you're being hit with so many messages now on so many platforms, you can simply tune them out. So is it enough to do simply an upfront TV buy or other activities, whether it's CPC or CPM campaigns, that are designed to get users to take an action, or do you have to create loyalty programs, affiliate programs, affinity programs? What do you think?
I think the slide that Dave put up was actually excellent. The funnel summarizes basically a lot of the problems we have, which is basically to get people showing up at the door, to make it through the door and actually play and stay in the house. So that funnel and the nature of what we do is to optimize the funnel, and you're pushing it to the limits, obviously. But then, once they've gone through that funnel, they are entering a cycle with us, right? This episodic tenure I was referring to. They're going to play the game, they're going to tag out, they're going to come back, they're going to pay, they're going to stop paying, they're going to play another game and come back. So basically, this funnel and this cycle are the two core components that have to work perfectly. The funnel itself can take years and years to optimize. And granted, the version that Dave presented is, I wish, Dave, that you had done that 5 years ago. But it's really where there's a lot of opportunities for optimization and constant work. I mean, everybody here will face the same problems of registration, download, first engagement, haha moment where you have this achievement of first level and things like that drive engagement basically in your game. Sampling, you put it right. Everybody wants to sample, where we had to take that into account at the very beginning. You cannot just expect people to read about a product and just buy it. It doesn't happen anymore. They have to sample. They have to make the product their own, and they have to have some form of social pressure on them who, basically is going to push them to actually engage even better in the game, right? So the funnel itself is a very, very, very important part of the marketing work, which is just not about, having people show up at the door, which are all the acquisition tactics, and we can spend an hour just on those, but also everything that's going to onboard your customer, pretty much, and retain him. Right? So, and this is where, and I'm just finishing with this, where direct marketing, community marketing are the core components of a retention strategy that you have to have. Those guys are willing to spend thousands of dollars with you if you market them well. That's the reality.
Well, speaking of powering the funnel, let's talk about a dirty word. Men think about it, women think about it, and I'm, of course, talking about...
What are you talking about?
Oh, well, let me spell it out for you, since you don't seem to get it. S-E-M, of course. Yeah. So, search engine marketing. How powerful?
It depends on your position in the marketplace. I think SEM and SEO could be absolutely powerful if you have a consistent message that you want to communicate to people. But if I don't need to scream to everybody in this room, Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. I mean, people have heard about it because, George Lucas did an amazing thing that people are really passionate about it. So maybe not as important for brand A, really important for brand B.
So we talk about this panel even, and we say the art of digital marketing, but how much of it is really a science, how much of it is engineering versus gut?
If you want my feel, I think, at the end of the day, and Leo, you touched base on that, we have to do the same things, but we have to do them right? Only we now open the world to a lot of measurements that are proving that we are doing the right thing, and, we can't escape that fact. But you need to have, a good content strategy. You have to have a good marketing message. I mean, those things are never going to go away. Only now you have the tools to measure and basically immediately measure your performance. So you have to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think that we live in an age where any question that you want to ask about your customer, you should ask about it and then see if you can figure out a way to track it. You know, check in your data warehouse, use whatever metrics that you need to do, tracking pixels or all that fancy stuff. You know, I completely agree with you in the fact that, you know, we have the data that we need to kind of transition it to absolutely a science. I always like to talk about blocking and tackling. Like, you always have to do the basics. You always have to do all the really easy things well, you know, and digital is just part of it. So is it right for this? Is it right for that? I don't know. I think that you can never forget that there absolutely is art and there is brilliance behind marketing and delivering messages. You know, there is going to be that magic that happens where you go, oh man, I really wish I would have thought of that. Like, that would have been really cool. And you have to leave room for that stuff inside of your campaigns, the stuff where people look at you like you're nuts. Like, dude, you're crazy. You can't do that. Oh, sure we can. Why not? Let's just try. The great thing about digital is that you can try all that stuff. You can put it up on Monday, and if it doesn't work by Monday night, you'll be like, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
Fair enough. Now, we've got titles that have persistent online multiplayer that are becoming an increasingly large component of their infrastructure. We have titles that have downloadable content on the back end that continues to support it. And on top of this, we have entirely digitally downloadable games. So what I wonder is it possible to market a game completely digitally, given that we have products that are completely digitally or increasingly moving that way? Or are retail, print, broadcast still very important components?
I think that depends on who you're going for. So for us, we know that the lowest cost of acquisition is actually going digitally. And we have spent millions of dollars on TV to try to hit a mass market, but that really depends on the type of game that you have and what platform that you're on. We exist strictly on PC. We know that the user has to download a 1.8 gigabyte file. And so naturally, a large portion of our marketing dollars actually goes to online because that's where they live and they're one click away from actually coming to our page and then 30 clicks away before they can actually play the game.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You can totally market solely digitally. It just depends on what you're trying to do. So if you have a new game that nobody's ever heard of, you might want to spend a lot of money digitally with a really, really low cost per acquisition and blast it out against your target market and hope that they show up, you know, and check it out.
And the cool thing about digital is really that's the first touchstone to actually creating a dialogue. So, I mean, TV is great. You reach a broad number of users. You actually create a brand. I don't see a lot of people looking at a banner and saying, like, oh, my God, that's the best banner ever, and getting super excited of a brand because of a banner. But what a banner actually allows you to do is to create that dialogue, send them to a place where you can create a communication channel, and that's very powerful.
In terms of what we're doing with marketing today, if you had a limited budget, and you had to pick one place to put it online, what have you found to be either the most effective channel, or what were you surprised to find was an utter and complete disaster?
How are you measuring effectiveness?
That's a good question. What would you say the most effective measurement for measuring effectiveness is?
I don't know. What would you say the most? No, I'm just kidding. Again, it depends on what you're trying to do. So if somebody's measuring me against click-through rate, or open rate for an email and be like, oh, dude, if you can get 98%, we'll give you a free car. Like, hey, that's one thing. But if I'm talking about, ROI to the bottom line, then it's completely different, right? So it's kind of hard to say do one thing or do another because I might want to spend $50 on somebody that I know is going to give me $200 a year, right? If their ARPU exceeds what I need, then great, and I'll spend the money to get them. So it depends on the channel, depends on the goal.
The wall between video game marketers and consumers has crumbled.